So welcome to How to Improve Your One-on-Ones. We're going to spend about 45 minutes going through a bunch of different tactics and exercises, which I hope you'll find really helpful. If at any point you get lost, you can always head back to the slide deck by going to menti.com. So I just wanted to start with what you're hoping to get out of the session today. Thanks to everyone who shared in advance. As you can see, there are a lot of similar themes. A lot of folks were asking things like, how often should I have one-to-ones? How do I structure one-on-ones? There were really a lot of questions around boundaries as well. So how do I let someone get on with their work without micromanaging them, but also find that balance between giving them the support they need, pushing them if I feel like they can do better. There are a lot of questions around remote work as well. So what is the right frequency of one-on-ones with a remote team, a fully remote team? And also, what should we cover in that? You know, if we don't get that much face time together, should we go beyond the tasks, beyond the projects, and try and use that time for connection and bonding? There are a lot of really interesting requests around when is the right time to use a one-on-one to discuss my career progression if my manager is only focused on the projects at hand and the tasks at hand. Hey, Ben, good to see you. So yeah, a lot of really common themes. And yeah, I think there's definitely an overlapping theme around just like psychological safety and like creating a space where people feel that they can discuss performance in a productive and safe way, where people feel that they can be honest when it comes to constructive feedback, but also the other way around, where people feel they can be honest, where they feel that their boundaries are being encroached upon, where they feel like they're being micromanaged. A lot of people also talked about just finding the balance in general. So how do I show up to that one-on-one where I can really be focused and give it my full attention? I think a lot of us are often micromanaging, sorry, I meant multitasking. A lot of us are multitasking, and it can mean it's really hard to focus when we're in that space. So that's where hopefully introducing a bit more structure can really help. A lot of people talked about neurodivergence as well and making the most of that time to make it accessible and inclusive. Again, I think that's where structure can be really, really powerful. So yeah, a lot of overlapping themes, which hopefully resonate, and we're going to tackle all of these in the next 45 minutes or so. Right, so let's move on to a question that I have for you. What do you struggle with the most when it comes to one-on-ones right now? Is it consistency with scheduling them regularly? A lot of folks talked about the fact that they just do not have a set cadence. They don't have a regular weekly, a regular bi-weekly, a regular monthly. Some people said they don't even know what that right frequency is. Is it that? Is it that the one-to-ones are just not covering career development at all? They're not covering your future in the company? Is it that it's really hard to listen or really hard to be heard? You know, maybe the airtime isn't balanced in that one-to-one. Maybe you're struggling to just be honest about what you need. As a manager, maybe you're struggling to talk about the performance issues. As a direct report, maybe you're struggling to get support from your manager about flexibility, training, whatever that might look like. So yeah, I'd love to see what's impacting you now. And then another thing I thought was, again, this is just coming up in all the different forms when you all signed up, follow up. A lot of folks said that there's a conversation, but then there's no follow up on that conversation, either being held accountable for what constructive feedback was shared, being supported on performance development, no paper chain, no recaps. So yeah, I'm just curious to see. I'll give you a minute. So it looks like a lot of people are definitely resonating with not having that time to actually zoom out and talk about career development. And what we're seeing at Hustle Crew is more and more teams being asked to do more with less. There are teams dealing with reorgs, restructurings. There are teams just going through serious changes, upheavals, and it makes it really difficult to use that limited time to zoom out and actually talk about what an individual wants in terms of their career path and career journey. But we can see that this is ultimately like what we rely upon our manager for, right? Like when we think about our future in the organization, we want to be excited about that future and see that growth path. And if we don't get the opportunity to talk about that, it can be really demotivating. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that in the training later. It looks like the next most popular thing is around follow-up and accountability. And that's where I think processes are really important. So what I've seen work in some of our clients is, a template, a Google Doc, a slide deck, and this is literally like the prompts for the one-on-one are there. What are your priorities this week? What are your blockers? And that's tracked on a regular basis. And if there are any actions that come up, again, that can be put into the tracker, put into a follow-up email. It looks like the next most popular topics were around speaking honestly about needs, which I think definitely comes down to trust and having like shared language, shared frameworks so that you can have difficult conversations and not feel like that will be weaponized against you down the line or that your confidence will be broken. And then, yeah, consistent scheduling. Cool. Well, let's jump into why one-on-ones are important and what best practices we can lean into to help address some of these issues. And don't worry too much about taking notes since I'm recording it and I'll share it with you all later. So we're going to cover why one-to-ones matter. And the reason I'm starting with that is because if you're struggling to regularly make time for one-on-ones, or you're struggling to structure them in a way that balances near-term and long-term career stuff, or you're just struggling to do that follow-up piece, tracking what was discussed, following up, staying accountable. Hopefully this section on why they matter will be a reminder to you of all the benefits you get for doing that. It might seem like extra admin, it might seem just like more work, but actually there's real value in putting structure around this, making time for it, and making time for career development conversations. And maybe your lack of appreciation of that value is stopping you from really putting that sufficient time into planning your one-on-ones. We're then going to talk about difficult conversations. So this is about being honest about your needs. We're going to give you some strategies for how you can do that. For people that have more power in that space, if you're a manager, for example, we're also going to talk about, how you can, be responsible in that space as someone who has the upper hand in the power dynamic. And we're going to also talk a little bit about some tricky scenarios. So there was a lot of requests and inquiries around how can I make someone feel safe? How can I make someone feel like they can open up to me? How can I also not micromanage someone? How can I make sure that someone is getting the right support that they need? And I think that's where it's really important for people that have more privilege or power in a space to recognize why someone might feel micromanaged or why someone might struggle to be open about what they need. So I'm going to dive into that and then I'm going to end on some best practices. So hopefully that sounds good. But if at any point anything's unclear, feel free to jump into the chat or unmute and say, whoa, slow down, I don't get it. So yeah, this training is for you. So why one-to-ones matter? I'll just start with some stuff which hopefully will resonate and feel super obvious to you guys, some of them anyway. We're all individuals. We all have individual needs, right? I remember when I first became a manager, 10 plus years ago at a startup called Groupon. Don't know if anyone remembers Groupon, daily deals. But one of the first things I learned in manager training was you don't manage a team, you manage individuals. So the way one person likes to receive feedback, for example, might be very direct in the moment. Whoa, Ben, there's a typo in that slide deck. Fix it now. The way someone else might like to receive feedback is, hey, Bella, can you stay behind after the meeting? I just wanted to talk to you about that deck. After everyone's gone, I can be like, hey, by the way, there's a typo. Let's fix it together. Everyone's different. Everyone has different preferences and styles. So unless you are making that effort to understand every single individual's preferences, it's going to be really hard for you to know, one person's clear directions is another person's, you're micromanaging me. And another person's, I like when you're direct, is another person's, why are you being mean to me? So it's really important, especially if you're a manager, if you have power and privilege in a space, to do that due diligence, do that work, and kind of say, wow, okay, I know every single person on my team's preferred way of receiving feedback, and that is the recipe that I can use to get the results that I want. It's also important, again, building on the fact that we're all individuals, individual roles, individual realities, to understand what are the ongoing blockers to productivity. I remember when I first introduced a new CRM system into my team, I thought it was really easy to use, where to get the client info, where to track notes from all the sales calls. But I just noticed that some person on my team, every time they had a client meeting, the notes were not being added to the system. And then I realized they didn't have the system set up properly the way that I did. So it wasn't easy for them to find the right page. It wasn't easy for them to find the right file. They were spending hours and hours just trying to find the right place in the system to input this information. And until I actually got their system all set up and then it was integrated into their emails and Slack and so much easier, I was able to understand, okay, that was a real blocker that I should have helped them with a lot sooner. One-on-ones also allow us to just build trust and rapport. There's a reason why there was such a increase in like conflict and difficult conversations and issues when people were working during the pandemic, because everyone saw their teammates as a face on the screen and forgot that when we walk away from this screen, we are a sibling, a parent, a partner, a spouse, a pet owner, whatever it might be. We forget that everyone has things going on. And that is actually proven in science to help us like build more strong relationships, having that emotional intimacy, having that emotional bandwidth. The more you know someone, the harder it is for you to be rude and disrespectful to them. The more you know someone, the easier it is for you to see them as another human worthy of your respect, worthy of your dignity. So one-on-ones are actually a really powerful way to build that respect and rapport together. It's also really important for you to create a space that doesn't have an audience, so that if someone is going through something personally, they have that opportunity to share it. Or if someone is struggling with something that could trigger shame or embarrassment, they have that opportunity to speak openly about it. And then finally, as we already touched on, it's also a really exciting opportunity to talk about your future. So you might be, in a junior role now, hoping to go mid-level. You might be in a mid-level role, hoping to go senior. You might just be looking to double down on some skills that you've already started developing through training, mentorship, or support. So again, if you're struggling to find time to make one-to-ones happen, you're struggling to find a regular, cadence for them, fortnightly, weekly, monthly, or you're struggling to put structure around them, link this to some of the other struggles within the team. Are you struggling to connect with someone? Are you struggling to, take them to the next level of productivity? All of these factors are linked. So maybe by investing more into your one-on-ones, structuring them, making them more regular, you can unlock some productivity, unlock some connection. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what can go wrong when you do a one-to-one, because it's not enough to just be like, hey, let's meet one-to-one, and then all this will magically happen. Suddenly you're going to be a more productive team and everyone's going to love each other and like have the best time. No. You're creating a space that's very intimate. No one is watching. No one can hear you. Let's be honest, a lot can go wrong. And if it does go wrong, it's going to be a very painful he said, she said for either HR or, I don't know, an employment tribunal, worst case scenario, to unpack. So it's very important, especially if you are the person with power in this dynamic, right? The manager, or the man in a company that's male dominated, the white person in a company that's mostly white, whatever it is, acknowledge the privilege and power you bring into the space, and recognize how those power dynamics could influence the level of honesty in that conversation. So let's say, for example, I am your manager. I bring you into our weekly one-on-one. And as you start talking about all the client meetings that week, I'm just like this. What was that? Oh, yeah. Sorry, did you say that you spoke to the client? If I'm not giving you my focus and my attention, there are so many ways you can interpret that. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't care about me. I'm not a valued member of the team. My time isn't as important as hers. There's something else happening that's more important than what I'm bringing to the team. So there's a risk that me being distracted in that one-to-one space makes this person feel devalued and makes this person feel excluded. And that could just damage our relationship even more. So it's really important that when you are in that one-to-one, especially if you have power, that you are focused and you are concentrating. The same goes with listening. Imagine if, again, we are having a one-on-one and I go, tell me about the conference last week. How did it go? You get one sentence into it. I'm like, cool. Anyway, let's talk about that spreadsheet from this morning. I haven't given you a chance to tell the story. I haven't given you a chance to tell me how the conference made you feel, what opportunities there were to connect with team clients, how it's inspiring your future career decisions. I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening to you. And that's again what can really go wrong in terms of I feel micromanaged, I feel directed, I feel commanded, I don't feel heard, I don't feel supported, I don't feel like I can trust you. So if you're coming into that space from a position of power, it's so important that you listen. And it works the other way. If your company's going through a restructuring, going through a reorg, you have a new manager, they're still finding their feet in the organization. If they're also being vulnerable with you about, hey, I'm new, you have to be honest with me about what you need. You have to, in real time, tell me this, tell me that. then you can also listen with compassion and go, okay, I hear you, I understand you, and I'll try. The final thing I wanted to say around that is just accountability. So if I'm a manager and someone from my team says, hey, listen, this client spoke to me in a way that I really didn't like, that was really disrespectful, and I say, I'm going to talk to them, I'm going to remind them about our zero tolerance policy. And I'm going to tell them, that's the last time. And if it happens again, we're not going to be able to work with them. And then 2 days later, we're hanging out with that client and I haven't said anything, I haven't done anything, and I haven't followed up on it. I'm losing my integrity, right? I'm losing trust because I said I would do something, I haven't done it. Or if I have done it, I haven't told them how, I haven't followed up, I haven't been accountable to what I promised. So, if you're making promises in that space, you have to follow up on them. Even if the follow up is, I know I promised this, the pay rise, the promotion, whatever it is, it's not going to happen. This is why. And I just want you to know. When we don't stay accountable, we damage the relationship and we make it feel like, well, I ask you to do things, they don't happen. So why should I bother asking you to do things again? The other risk I wanted to talk about is something that's happened to me. And that is when information that's shared in that one on one private space is taken out of the room, taken out of context, and possibly even weaponized. And this is really dangerous. And this is something that happens especially to people who are already a minority on the team, people who are part of a marginalized group. There was a time I worked in a very small startup, and we were in a very aggressive sales mode, and I was doing a lot of sales. And I was struggling to get new sales leads. So I would literally call everyone on my list, and then there was no one else to call. And my manager said, should we like hire someone or outsource someone to find new leads for the city that you're targeting? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. Lo and behold, 3 months later in my performance review, one of the negatives is she asked us to outsource someone to do her job for her when no one else asked us to. And I was like, that was his idea. And no one else was in the room. It was just me and him. And that was one of those moments where I just thought, well, obviously I'm leaving this company and I can't work here anymore because I can't even trust my boss and my manager who's supposed to be supporting me. Something that in my mind was an innocent conversation turned out to be a mark against me. And that is something that can really, damage trust and damage relationships. So if something is shared in that space that is later used against someone, that is going to be your fault as a manager, your responsibility. So you really need to be mindful of how taking things out of context can violate trust and rapport. The other thing I was going to say is like, it is ultimately the responsibility of both teammates to make sure that there is a consistent one-on-one relationship happening. If you're struggling to meet weekly, meet fortnightly. If you're struggling to meet fortnightly, meet monthly. But you have to both feel accountable to creating that one-on-one connection, even if it's 20 minutes, even if it's just on Zoom, even if it's just 5 minutes, hey, how's it going? 5 minutes, what are you working on this week? 5 minutes, what can I help you with? 5 minutes, what are you excited about this year? What are you hoping to, get out of it? But you both need to feel accountable to that because as we already covered, you both have something to gain as a manager, as a line manager, you both have a lot of advantages. The final thing I wanted to talk a little bit about in terms of what can go wrong in that space is lack of awareness of our own biases, our own privileges. For example, I don't have any long-term health conditions, nor am I neurodivergent, and I speak English as a first language. And this allows me a lot of advantages. As a business owner, I can easily go to my clients' offices, I can pitch them about new training options that we're offering, I can receive the information they're sharing easily, I can type up in the notes, I can follow up easily. Sometimes, if you are someone who has a lot of privileges like myself, it's very easy to assume other people can also function at that level with that same set of skills, with that same lack of hindrances. In reality, people aren't even speaking English as a first language. People have dyslexia, people have hidden disabilities, people have long-term health conditions, people could be financially excluded from being able to commute to the client's office, show up on time, etc. So again, if you're someone with privilege or power, it's really important for you to not assume anything of someone's abilities or performance and instead create a space, create an environment where someone feels open and honest enough to volunteer that information to you. And hopefully, if you've been working with people for a long time, you should already know a lot about what their needs are And if there are any accommodations that need to be made in a one-on-one setting, whether that's, you know, the way that I process information, I'd rather have a structured schedule. I'd rather know what we're talking about in advance, that I can gather my thoughts. Not everyone can just free flow, freestyle, come up with ideas about what they're working on and come up with suggestions of what they want to discuss for career development. Some people would benefit from having that clear structure and that time to prepare. So just because you don't need that doesn't mean someone else doesn't need that. So check your privilege, check your biases. So I'm just going to move on to the next topic. But as ever, if you have any other questions or follow-ups or concerns, just jump into chat and let me know, or feel free to unmute. So, oh, okay. I don't remember putting that slide in. Let's just skip that. So now that we talked about the risks, I want to talk a little bit about practical strategies, practical tools for navigating difficult conversations. So if you're worried about micromanaging, you're worried that you're not being able to tackle performance issues effectively, here are some strategies for you. The first thing I want to say is, so I live in the UK, and in the UK, people see any type of conflict as a fight. And that's very much a cultural thing, because my parents come from Nigeria and the Philippines, and their conflict is ordinary conversation. We're just like, oh, you disagree? I disagree. Let's get into it. This is great. So recognizing that, in a lot of Northern Europe, disagreement is already a negative thing, I think is really important, because it's a reminder that sometimes we are avoiding important conversations about boundaries, performance, feeling micromanaged, feeling undersupported, not having space to discuss our needs, because it feels like it's wrong. It feels like we're having a negative conversation, a fight, when actually we're trying to have a healthy and productive conversation where we can find that common ground. And that's where training on collaboration, difficult conversations, shared tools is really important. At Hustle Crew, we use a framework called coin like money. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend looking into it, or you can email me and I can tell you more information about that training. But we use the coin model as a framework for delivering constructive feedback. And it's really helpful because it takes the emotions out of it, it takes the personal blame out of it, and it's something that you can email in advance, you can discuss in the moment, and effectively unpack a conflict into stages. So it's really important for you and your team, you and your manager, you and your direct report, to develop a healthy approach to conflict. And see it as, I remember seeing this reel once, and it was like this couple that had been married for like 35 years or something, and it was like, oh, our number one tip for like being married, and it was like, learn to fight good. And they were just going on about how learning to fight, but like in a good way, like not where they're scared to do it or they're like afraid to do it, but like arguing in like almost like a very diplomatic, I see your point, but I see your point, but has been like a core part of how their relationship has survived. And that lesson has really stuck with me, because I think it's the same with work. A lot of people end up leaving a job just because they never had like the courage or the tools to like tell their manager, this isn't working, you need a different approach. And a lot of people say people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. So yeah, we're all different people. Just because two people look alike, grew up on the same street, same religion, same whatever, doesn't mean they're going to have the same perspectives. So acknowledge that. And whatever you're doing, be kind and respectful. The minute you enter a space with an air of superiority, empathy is gone. Superiority kills empathy. So enter that space, even though I'm older, I have something to learn. Even though I'm more senior, I have something to learn. Stay curious. Curiosity fuels empathy and connection. So yeah, always be kind and always be respectful. The other thing to do, regardless of which side of the table you're on, is to act as if you don't know anything about the situation, right? Let's just say this client pitch just blew up, this, new product feature just broke, whatever it is. If you're meeting someone one-on-one to discuss it, act like you don't even know what happened. Just let them tell you their version of the story first, because that's what's going to establish that connection. That's what's going to establish that trust and challenge your own assumptions. So whatever is going on, even if it's like, oh, you're having a bad day, this happened with so and so, you want to talk about your promotion, pay rise, whatever it is, always assume you don't have all the information. You don't know how they're showing up today, you don't know what's on their mind, you don't know their history, you don't know their aspirations. If you're worried about how that could, come across. Oh, but I'm the manager, I should know everything, whatever it is. Like, if you're ignorant of some aspect of their lived experience, ignorant of something that they've been dealing with at work, just acknowledge that. Just be like, do you know what? I had no idea, or I don't know enough about this. Can you tell me more? Can you help me understand? Let's say you're leading a customer success team, but it's actually been a while since you had to deal with an escalation. It's been a while since you had to deal with a difficult customer. And maybe someone had like a really painful interaction in a prejudiced or discrimination situation. You might be like, help me understand how that phrase is offensive. Okay, that's really interesting. Right, we're going to look out for this now. We're going to know that that's not cool. We're going to like shut the conversation down. It's also really important to remember that your interpretation of events could be flawed. And I think I see this in a lot of time poor environments where something went wrong, something broke down. We tell ourselves a story of why, and then that's the story we stick to. And then any other version of the story, we're just like, no, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. And it's like, it's true for who's saying it, right? Every person's reality is true for them. So the goal for you is not to find the truth. The goal for you is to build the productivity in the team, build the trust in the team, continue making progress within the team. It's not about finding who's right, finding who's wrong. It's like, how do we move forward? How do we move past this in a way where everyone feels heard? Everyone feels seen. No one feels like they've given up now. So these are the tips that I would give to you. The final thing I wanted to say on difficult conversations is choose the time to have a difficult conversation with intention, right? I'm not going to be having a difficult conversation when I'm hungry. I'll just be honest. Because when I'm hungry, it's very hard for me to concentrate. It's very hard for me to listen. There are also certain parts of my hormonal cycle, well, when maybe I should also just, I could start crying. And whether or not I'm the one receiving the feedback or giving it. So what I'm trying to show you is that our body language matters. The eye contact we give matters. The volume that we speak at matters. So if you are engaging someone in a difficult conversation, ideally, especially if you're the person with power, privilege, seniority, do it where you can show up in a way that allows you to be compassionate, empathetic, listen without interrupting, listen to believe. That's compassionate listening. Compassionate listening is where someone talks and you believe them, like, wow, that happened. Sometimes you could have been there, but you didn't see it like that. And you're like, wow, I didn't see it like that, but I see that now. I see that now. You're right. You're right. Oh my gosh, are you okay? Yes, okay, I hear you. I hear you. That is compassion. So mirror their body language, acknowledge, affirm, don't interrupt them. Think about when you first started school, nursery, kindergarten, elementary school, whatever it is. Think about the teachers you liked, the teachers you still remember because they were nice to you. I bet you remember them because they listened to you with compassion. Unlike other adults that just sent you on your way or, belittled you or made you feel small, that teacher probably hung on to your every word like it was gold dust. And that's why you remember them. And, there's that very famous Maya Angelou quote, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And I think this is a very powerful reminder for all teammates, especially managers. People don't remember what you said, they'll remember how you made them feel. If you made them feel like they were crazy or stupid for coming to you with this information, that's how they'll feel. Doesn't matter how you delivered the message. But if you make them feel like it was the right thing to do, being honest with you, sharing this information, and now you're going to support them and help them, that's going to be a lasting memory, a lasting positive memory. The other thing I was going to say is acknowledge the emotions in the room. Sometimes as managers, teammates, whatever dynamic, we do a little bit of toxic positivity. Someone comes to us and they're like, oh, I'm having a really hard time right now. I'm really stressing about this and everything's going wrong over there and blah, blah, blah. And, there'll be that person who's like, oh, but this is going well. Or here's the silver lining. Here's the silver lining. You know what? Actually, that's not listening with compassion. Sometimes you just need to go, that is rubbish. You're right. I'm sorry, but that sucks. And that is actually more affirming than trying to say, I see your sadness, I see your frustration, but look over there at that glimmer of joy. Sometimes someone just needs you to acknowledge even what's negative. If someone starts crying, don't pretend they're not crying. Say, hey, I can see this is a upsetting conversation. This is a difficult conversation. Should we pause? Should we should we have a little bathroom break? I have a tissue. I don't have a tissue. You don't have to keep going. There have been times where I cried at work and people just pretended my eyes were not leaking. Like, yeah, so anyway, la 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 la. And I was just like, these people are monsters. So if there are emotionals in the room, acknowledge them. If someone's getting angry, again, you can be like, hey, I can see something I said is, um, you know, yeah, making you react. Maybe I haven't been sensitive enough. Shall we come back to this conversation later? And even if it feels tempting to interrupt someone when they get into their flow, when they start telling their, constructive feedback, their version of events, whatever it is, just wait for them to finish. Wait for them to finish. Wait until there is a clear, long finish, pause, or gap to then go, is there anything else you want to say? All right, cool. Now I'll start speaking, especially if you're the manager, the person with power in that space. So yeah, hopefully these have been like a helpful reminder of the strategies you can adopt when you're engaging in difficult conversations. I'm just going to go quickly, yeah, to the first slide. This is mostly about don't avoid the conflict, acknowledge their different perspectives, be kind and respectful. Then assume you don't have all the information. If you are coming into the space with the need to listen, especially if you're the manager, um, if you are ignorant about someone's lived experiences, how that's affecting how they show up, how you've misinterpreted the situation, own up to it. Nothing to be ashamed about. Teachable moments are great. And then finally, remember how the way you are showing up and engaging and affirming someone is impacting that relationship in real time, impacting trust in real time. If someone is sharing some negative emotions, you don't need to deflect those with positivity. You can acknowledge negative emotions. We are all human. We experience all the emotions, unless we're sociopaths, in which case we act them out. But yeah, also just stay silent and let someone talk. Cool. So, before we go to the next final section of strategies to help you improve your one-to-ones, please head to your Menti, which is hopefully still open, and just let me know if there's anything else that you want to know about navigating conflict. So navigating conversations about performance, micromanagement, I want a pay rise, anything at all that you still would like to cover, and I'll do my best to squeeze it in. So I'll just give you a few seconds to think about that. So you can just go to menti.com and use the code at the top of the screen if there is anything else, or if it's easier to put it into the chat, up to you. Okay, well, I'm just going to move us forward, but if you do think of anything else you want me to cover, just pop it into the chat or unmute and let me know. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about what could go wrong in a one-to-one and then could affect your ability to have these honest, productive conversations with someone. A lot of people don't know the real definition of gaslighting, and it's when someone starts to question their reality due to manipulation. In the film that the phrase is based on, a husband was trying to make his wife think she went crazy, so he'd like leave the gas cooker on and stuff like that. So he was intentionally trying to make her go cuckoo. In work, a lot of times it's actually done unintentionally just so that someone can save face or so that someone can justify their version of events if someone else's version of events doesn't align with it. It's really important, especially if you're in a position of power or privilege, to avoid using phrases like, oh, you're overreacting. If I come to you and I say, hey, manager, at work drinks last night, so and so got really handsy, and that's not cool. And that makes me feel unsafe and uncomfortable. Or so and so started touching my hair, saying they never felt an afro so soft that I was an exotic person. And they go, oh, God, they were just, it's a compliment. I'd love if someone touched my hair. You're gaslighting me because I'm giving you an example of how I felt unsafe. I'm giving you evidence for why I don't feel that's appropriate team behavior, and you're just sliding past that and making me feel like I'm feeling wrong things and I should be feeling other things. Similarly, don't gaslight someone by not taking accountability. If someone's like, hey, when I shared with you my accessibility needs because I have this dyslexia thing or that, and you made a joke about it, that really hurt. And if you then go, oh, I was only joking though, again, that's not the appropriate response. That's a response that can really damage trust. You want to instead go, yeah, that's on me. Sorry about that. So yeah, just make sure you're not unintentionally gaslighting people on your team. Um, Other things that I just wanted to remind you of, and feel free to like take a picture, or maybe when you get the recording, this can be the slide that you sort of like take a screenshot of and put on a sticky. They're all very, very accessible, doable things. Listen without interrupting, even if what you're hearing is difficult. Will you please stop micromanaging me when you do this? Can we please talk about my pay rise and promotion because you keep avoiding it? Whatever it is, just let someone, speak and acknowledge emotions. If someone's upset, if someone's annoyed, if someone's withdrawn, just be like, hey, I'm sensing this. How can I help? It's also really important to take accountability on a personal level. Like, yes, you are a representative of a company, of a department, but you're also an individual, right? And when you're in a one-to-one space, you are just showing up as individuals. So speak from the I, like, I'm really sorry that I can't give you that promotion right now. I've spoken to HR. It's not going to be possible to make it happen. Or I'm really sorry I canceled our last meeting. I I had other priorities. I let them get in the way. I won't do it again. Sometimes we hide behind the we. Oh, well, we want to, but we can't, or we do this or we that, especially in a one on one dynamic, to speak from the I, take that individual ownership. Another thing is to focus on impact over intent. And that's where that Maya Angelou quote really comes in. It doesn't matter what you meant to say or meant to do. What matters is how it's impacted someone's state of mind, someone's mental health, someone's confidence. Um, and yeah, it's really helpful if you can to constantly remind yourself of common types of bias, whether that's performance bias, which is, judging someone's ability to perform on face value, which benefits people in dominant groups, men in the corporate space, white people in the corporate space. And also check your privileges. If someone comes to you with their needs as someone who's neurodivergent and you are not neurodivergent, that is really important because we're most judgmental about experiences that we don't have, right? Privilege is invisible to those who have it. So if it's not something that I go through, it's very easy for me to minimize it or diminish someone's experience of it. And that can be very dehumanizing. Be prepared if you can. So this is my guidance to you. Create a structured, timed agenda. Okay, we have 20 minutes. 5 minutes is just catching up, checking in. How are we doing today? Blah, blah, blah. 10 minutes is like urgent, time sensitive stuff. Last 10 minutes, long term stuff. And then like a wrap up and reflection. And if your manager isn't doing this for you, then you do it for yourself. Show up with the Google Doc open. Hey, here's my timed agenda. And if your manager's going off over here, going off over there, you've got a watch, you've got a clock. You can be like, hey, thank you so much, but we've just got 15 minutes left and I still need to talk about XYZ. Be the timekeeper. If easier, put the agenda in the calendar invite, put the talking points there, put the time things there, put a timer on the table, whatever helps you. But always make sure you have that check-in at the start of the session. You want to know how people are showing up today, showing up in the moment. Because someone might be like, do you know what? I just found out we're going to have to, completely redesign that project. We're going to have to move offices, whatever it is. So, remember that we're all still humans and have that compassion and empathy. You never want to like jump straight into it and then halfway through someone tells you like they're going to a funeral tomorrow. And you're like, oh, snap, I feel like such a bad person. If I asked you how are you, what's going on in the first 5 minutes, that would explain why these last 10 minutes you've been quite withdrawn and demotivated. And then again, in an ideal world, maybe managers would follow up with a recap of actions, next steps. Hey, I'm holding you accountable to this stuff related to your performance. But if they're not doing it, then you can do it. You can be like, hey, I understand you want me to work on this, improve on that. I hear you. I'm going to show you what I can do. And I know we didn't have time to discuss my promotion or pay rise or future here today, but hopefully next time we can meet for an extra 10 minutes and do it then. And then finally, you are allowed to establish boundaries. If you don't want to talk about what you did on the weekend, don't talk about what you did on the weekend. your manager is not entitled to your extracurricular activities. You can talk about other things. You can talk about shows you've been watching, books you've been reading, songs you've been listening to, whatever, what you had for breakfast. What you had for breakfast can be small talk. That can be the boundary you're willing to go to, no further. That's totally fine. And if you're someone who's like, oh, I love talking about my weekends, I love talking about my kids, I love talking about my pets, I love talking about this, I love talking about that, great. Just because someone doesn't mean they're a bad person, doesn't mean they're not a team player. It could be that someone used to love talking about going to church on the weekend and then cooking for their auntie on the weekend. And then they went to, one day someone started laughing at them about it, started teasing them about it. And that just taught them, I'm not going to talk to people about things that are personal to me in case they laugh about it, because that's really hurtful. So your boundaries aren't someone else's boundaries, and respect that. So as we are coming to the end of the session, is there anything else you would like to know about making the most of one-to-ones? We've covered tactics, strategies, best practices, helpful reminders. Feel free to jump them in the chat while you're thinking about it. And again, just feel free to use the chat. I'm just going to do a super quick recap of the best practices. So best practices with communication were around listening, acknowledging emotions, speaking from the I, and focusing on the impact of your words and actions, not the intent. It doesn't matter if you meant to be a good manager or you meant to be nice and what you did was make someone cry and feel like a piece of, work backwards from the impact. This session is to help you take your performance from here to here because we care about you and I know you can do this. Here's the plan. What do you think? Check your biases, check your privilege. Be prepared, have structure. We do this every week. This is the time we have. We always start with a check-in. Always, always, always. Even if you only have 5 minutes today, 10 minutes today, you start with the check-in. And then you recap. And then you follow up. And you acknowledge that what my boundaries aren't your boundaries. And we respect them. We don't judge people for their boundaries. Oh, she always leaves at 5. Is she breaking her contract? Let her leave at 5. Is she getting her work done? Why are you jealous? Like, that's on her. If her time management is better than yours, you don't know what time she wakes up. Maybe she's sitting there through lunch break. So yeah. We have a question. Would you separate one-on-ones that are more task management focused and ones that are more coaching focused? That is so dependent on like the capacity you have to meet. Most people will not have the time, capacity, resource, freedom to have like different styles of one-to-ones. So, it really depends. And also, not everyone has coaching skills. Not all managers have coaching skills. So, it really depends. I think task management comes first and foremost because we're judged on our performance before anything when it comes to pay rises, promotions, etc. But yeah, if someone also just wants a bit of coaching, wants a bit of support, if you can make time for that, great. If you can't make time for that, send them podcasts that you've heard that are really helpful. Send them book recommendations. Encourage them to join communities. Valeria asks, what would be great examples of effective good starters for conflicting conversations to make sure a direct report can share their opinions confidently and with trust? So the COIN feedback model is really good. I just put it into the chat. As I said, Hustle Crew facilitates training on this. So if you're a team and you want to all get on the same page about how to use the COIN model, that can be really helpful. Another really helpful model is called nonviolent communication. It's not just for work, it's also for relationships and marriages and friendships. But nonviolent communication is an empathy-based framework that encourages you to describe what happened, describe how that made you feel, and make a recommendation for what you would like to do differently next time. So instead of going, you're always really mean to me and that sucks, you can be like, in that meeting, you described my work as, that made me feel, I wish that you had told me before, one-on-one, instead of in front of everyone. So yeah. Right, last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll start wrapping it up. So one of the things I would, oh, here we go. How can I get through to someone who thinks they're ready for a promotion when they're not quite there yet, to make them understand what's missing when they get defensive hearing what's missing? So what's really interesting about this is if someone thinks they're not, if someone thinks they're ready for a promotion, they have not been given enough constructive feedback. So if there's someone who's like, and if they're getting defensive, they've also maybe not been presented that constructive feedback in a way that allows them to not get defensive. So again, look at nonviolent communication, look at the COIN framework, make sure you have regular meetings with this person, like on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis. Don't let it go longer than a month. And use that time to give very evidence-based examples of where there's room for them to grow. And try to use your personal growth journey as an example. Like, I also used to make mistakes like this, or I also used to struggle with this, or I also used to misunderstand, my abilities around this. And here's what helped me. So you might need to bring some of your own vulnerability into that dynamic so that they can be more vulnerable with you. But yeah, that would be some of my suggestions there. So in the last minutes, I would be so grateful if you could jump into this link, tinyurl.com/Abadesi class feedback. I try to do these free webinars once every couple of months, and my ideas for the webinar come from the feedback that you share. So if you have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just open up the link and let me know. And there's been a lot of really interesting research on how we remember information and how we retain information. And that's to actually like reflect on like a big learning that we've had in the last